Hey gang, welcome. I want to do a real quick demo just about color mixing, and to show you what I've done to prepare for this. The paper is completely dry. I use this brush to simply carry water um, into, like this. I'll just dip it in the water and it's loaded up, and I hold it over and I just squeeze maybe once or twice into each of these colors, and then what that does is give me the liquid that I need, so that when I stir this, it's going to take a lot of paint off, and the bottom portion of the paint is going to soak in the water, and that way I can go back and draw a little more paint a little more quickly for what I'm about to do. So what I'm going to do is similar to a color wheel, and then I'm going to show you how the colors mix and blend as they make contact. And I might play with a little neutralization where you take color complements and you do the same thing. So I'm going to start with red. I'm just going to put a few touches of red in a particular place here, and then I'm going to go with yellow for another here. And get a little more of that. It's not a very clean looking yellow, unfortunately. I think I might have accidentally put a little red in it, but I think it'll probably still work for our purposes here. Next is blue. Here. We'll get a little more color, put that in there. Now, as this stuff, you got the three primaries, and when they make contact with each other, for example, if I drag a little yellow down this way, all right, clean the brush, and a little blue this way, you see it gives you a green. If you let that dry, and actually the closer it gets to the blue, what you get is not necessarily green. It is a version of green, but it's more like a blue-green, which is the tertiary version of that. If I add a little more blue, there you go. Gives you a blue-green like turquoise or something like that. There, so you got green, yellow, blue, turquoise, or yellow greens, and variations. So I'm going to take this yellow, pull it over here now, clean the brush again. Now that takes very little red to make yellow. I'm just going to touch and watch what it does. Red is a very powerful color, and it's very intense. Doesn't require a lot to make orange. And there's orange. So pure yellow, pure red mixed together make orange very, very easily. And then I'm going to grab some of the blue from the palette, actually. I don't know how much I have left to pull across. And red is going to be the same. I'm going to get a little more color there, dab it on. With blue, it takes very little red to make violet. And there is violet. Okay? Now, one thing you can do, and I could probably exemplify this a little bit. I'm going to grab a little yellow, dab it in the middle there. I'm just going to take a touch of red, put that in the yellow, and make orange. Doesn't take much red at all to make orange. And then a little bit of blue. And it will either, if mixed correctly, it will take a little practice. What you're shooting for is brown or gray. If you're shooting for black, like now, that in the middle, it kind of looks green, which means I need to add just a touch more red. You always want to shoot for the opposite color of the color that's there if you're trying to make gray. So for example, now it looks a little bit more like brown, but it's definitely a lot more neutral than it was. It's kind of the idea. And if you practice this enough, you'll eventually end up with black. Now regarding, what do you do from here? Where does your color mixing go? Well, I'm going to lift some of this color off because it's pooling up a little bit. So I'm just taking a regular brush. Doesn't have much water, lifting like a sponge. I'm going to use the color white now and show you some of the variety you can get. So let's say I put a spot of white here. You know, so what do you get when you mix white with yellow? Well, let's pull it out and see. We'll pull a little bit of yellow and white together. Usually you can end up with a very, very bright looking color that's a lot like sunlight. I would never just go straight yellow with sunlight. I would always mix white with it for that reason, because it will appear very, very bright. Now I'm going to clean my brush because I've got a mixture of yellow in there, and I'm going to do a little bit of the white here with orange. I'll paint across, up the top, draw some of that into it, and what you'll end up with is a nice peach color that could be used for flesh. It's very, very nice. I tell people all the time, if you want to make skin color, I mean, make brown and then add white. But it depends on the person, depends on the skin type. Here is a really good starter color. If you add white to orange, it's going to make a nice skin color to start with. Let's do a little more white with red and pull some of that red into it, and what you have is pink. A little bit more, and the more you add, the darker it will become, the richer it will become, but that's a decent looking pink. So you got peach, pink, and then when you add white to violet, it gives you a nice lilac color here. Pull some of that into it. So there's lots of varieties that springs out from the colors that you start with, and if you know the basics, you could mix varying degrees of white with each of these and broaden your spectrum of colors that you have at your disposal by quite a bit. Do the same thing with white, of course. You'd make a sky blue with the blue just by adding white to it. It's kind of has a nice appearance to it, and if it looks a little bit washed out, you just grab a little more blue and add to it. And then finally with green, get a little bit of the white there, and you get sort of an emerald color. It's quite nice. Pull a little green from the palette there so you can tell. Okay. Oddly enough, black has blue in it because black is a combination of the three primaries. So whenever you add black to yellow, you might think you're making it darker, when in essence what it'll do is look like it's making green, because that's kind of what it will do. But this is enough to get you started, I think, in knowing how the colors are going to react when you mix them, when you bleed them together. And when you're glazing one wet layer on top of a dry, you'll still get the same results. It just look a little bit different, perhaps maybe have a little bit more depth. Okay, that's it for now. Have fun.